Have you ever found yourself in a moment like this? Someone drops a sarcastic remark in the middle of a meeting. The room falls silent, then bursts into laughter. And there you sit, forcing a smile, while inside you burn as if stripped bare. You don't understand why. You don't know what made them choose you as their target. You begin to doubt yourself. Am I too soft? Is there something wrong with me? But you need to know this. Their behavior reflects them, not you. Those who regularly humiliate others in public do not act randomly. They have reasons. And if you don't see through it, you'll keep getting hurt. Stoicism, an ancient philosophy, doesn't ask you to strike back in anger, nor to suffer in silence. It teaches you how to preserve your self-worth amid the storm of humiliation. Today, we'll walk through 6 reasons why people humiliate you, and how you can stop being a victim. 1. They sense you lack inner steadiness. Some people don't need long to figure out who's vulnerable. They walk into a room, observe the smallest expressions, listen to how you speak, watch how you respond, and within minutes they've sensed who they can push. They may not do it consciously, but social instinct drives them to probe for weakness. Not physical weakness, but something less visible. Psychological fragility. It's subtle, yet easy to spot. It might show in a hesitant gaze, an uncertain tone, a forced smile when teased, or simply the inability to draw boundaries. When they see you don't react, don't object, don't speak up. They understand that you haven't yet learned how to protect yourself. The truth is, a lack of inner steadiness isn't a crime, but it's often punished in society. It doesn't look like a wound, yet it draws in exactly the kind of people who press down hard on it. They throw out a jab, and when you laugh it off, they take it as an invitation. Next time, they'll go further. A sharper joke, a more dismissive look, a public reminder that you're not capable, not smart enough, not strong enough. If you stay silent, they take that as agreement. And just like that, respect for you begins to fade. Not because you are weak, but because you haven't yet defended your worth. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That means you cannot control whether someone insults you, but you can choose whether their words deserve your attention. Yet here is the hard truth. If you've never defined your inner worth, you'll be quick to believe what others say about you. You'll carry that insult inside you, let it corrode your confidence bit by bit until you no longer believe you deserve respect. That's not a wrong reaction. It's the response of someone who hasn't built their foundation before the winds began to test them. Those who humiliate others aren't always malicious, but they are driven by a psychological reflex. When they see someone who hasn't set their own value, they assign one for them, and usually it's low. This world does not reward excessive modesty. It respects those who dare to say, "That's enough." If you've never looked in the mirror and told yourself, "I don't need anyone to validate my worth. I know who I am, and I will not allow anyone to diminish that," then chances are others will treat you as if you have no real value. From there, they see you as an easy target, someone who can be mocked, dismissed, pushed aside without consequence. Let's be clear, standing up for yourself doesn't mean shouting, retaliating, or trading blow for blow. Stoicism doesn't teach you to respond with emotion. It teaches you to respond with presence. Sometimes the strongest act is timely silence, a calm gaze that makes the attacker feel foolish, a refusal to reply to a jab. not because you're afraid, but because it simply isn't worth your attention. And that only becomes possible when you've built an inner pillar, a place no one can reach without your permission. We often confuse humility with passivity, peacekeeping with surrender. And unfortunately, that line only becomes visible after many wounds. But once you realize the truth, that while you cannot control others, you can fully control your own boundaries, you begin to change. You no longer feel the need to engage in conversations laced with hidden insults. You no longer laugh off cruel jokes. You no longer feel guilty for leaving a room where you're not respected. And slowly, the world begins to shift its stance toward you. Not because people suddenly became kinder, but because you're no longer the person they assumed they could belittle. Inner steadiness is not something anyone can hand you. It comes from self-awareness, honest inner dialogue, and those moments when you choose not to react by habit, but by principle. Every time you say no to humiliation, you lay another brick in the foundation of your self-respect. Every time you remain silent at the right moment, you strengthen your inner voice. And when that becomes a way of life, you'll understand. Others may try to make you feel small, but they will fail because you are no longer waiting for them to tell you who you are. 2. They're trying to control you. Not everyone who humiliates you does so out of personal hatred. Many do it for a simpler reason. They want control. Humiliation is one of humanity's oldest tools of control. When someone shames you in front of others, they gain an invisible advantage. The power to shape how you're perceived. It's a subtle kind of power. No shouting, no orders. Just one well-timed comment, one perfectly placed smirk, one loaded remark dropped in front of a crowd. You suddenly feel smaller, weaker, disoriented in the very room you entered with confidence and preparation. Intentional humiliation doesn't just target your feelings. It targets your position within a social order. In any group, whether a company, a family, or a community, there's always a hidden hierarchy. The ones who speak, the ones who follow, the ones who are respected, and the ones who are dismissed. Those who crave control use humiliation to re-establish or reinforce their standing. By making you feel beneath them, they rise. Without having to work for it. They don't need to outperform you or live more virtuously. They just need to make you feel unworthy, incapable, undeserving of standing tall. And if you believe that, they've succeeded. The danger lies in not realizing you're being controlled, because it doesn't come in the form of a command, but as a feeling. Embarrassment makes you afraid to speak again. Shame makes you withdraw your ideas. The sense of being judged leads you to censor yourself. And when this happens repeatedly, you begin to lose your voice. You are present, but no longer truly there. You show up, but no longer have impact. The person, the one who once tossed out half-joking barbs, now controls the psychological space that should have been yours. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." This isn't just a reminder of self-control, it's a warning about where true power lies. When someone tries to hurt you with words, they don't control you. But when you believe them, when you let those words touch your emotions, when you change your behavior to avoid the next humiliation, that's when they've taken control. No chains, no threats. Just you, adjusting yourself to avoid shame. And the balance of power shifts. I once experienced this in a critical meeting. I presented an idea I'd spent weeks preparing. Just a few sentences in, a colleague, known for his sharp tongue, dropped a sarcastic comment. Nothing crude, nothing extreme, just, "Oh, another one of your creative ideas, huh?" paired with a smirk. The room laughed. I paused, not because I was deeply offended, but because I felt I had lost momentum. I forced a smile and continued, but something in me had changed. I no longer spoke with the same conviction. At that moment, I didn't yet realize I'd been controlled. Stoicism teaches that real power is not in what you say, but in not being shaken by what others say. The one who tries to shame you is not truly powerful. In fact, they feel out of control in their own life, and humiliating others is their shortcut to reclaiming a sense of power. They lack the capacity to build real trust, so they push others down to feel taller. But that control only works if you cooperate, if your mind remains steady, if you know your worth, if you understand that their laughter does not define you. Then their game ends before it begins. Not reacting does not mean being passive. Silence, used rightly, is a powerful response. Not retreating in the face of mockery is a quiet but potent form of resistance. Not altering yourself to avoid criticism is how you preserve your inner freedom. And that freedom, as Epictetus once said, is the foundation of all human dignity. No man is truly free who is not master of himself. And mastering yourself doesn't mean defeating others. It means not letting them steer your mind. There is a cold but useful truth. Those who must humiliate others to feel strong are, in fact, weak inside. They don't need retaliation. They need to see that you are unaffected. When you remain unshaken, when you stay yourself with calm and dignity, when your actions show strength without the need for words, they realize you are not easily manipulated. And when they can no longer control you, they lose interest, lose influence, and gradually lose the very power they thought they held. 3. They envy you. This is the hardest reason to accept. Not because it's untrue, but because we want to believe that if we live kindly, avoid showing off, and harm no one, then no one will envy us. But the truth is, sometimes it's your quiet strength, your integrity, and your progress that make others feel uneasy. And in that discomfort, some people don't choose to rise. They choose to pull you down. Not to destroy you, but to dim your light. Because your light shines into corners they haven't dared to face in a long time. Envy is a complex emotion. It doesn't always show up as a hateful glare or harsh words. Sometimes it comes as a casual remark, a faint, sarcastic smile, a supposedly neutral comment that carries this message. Don't think you're better than the rest. The envious rarely say outright that they dislike you. They find subtle ways to shrink you, just enough so they no longer feel beneath you. In psychology, this is called malicious envy, the kind that doesn't motivate growth, but seeks to bring others down. What makes these people hard to spot is that they don't attack with anger. They use jokes, politeness, and honest feedback to mask their true intent, to make you doubt yourself. They know you're capable. They see your persistence, your insight, your calm, things they once desired, but gave up on or never cultivated. And so you become a living mirror, reflecting back what they no longer have the courage to face. Like anyone confronted with an uncomfortable mirror, they don't want to look inward. They want to break the mirror. Seneca once wrote, It is not the man who has too little who is poor, but the one who craves more. The envious are not poor in possessions. They are poor in inner peace. They see you living with purpose, with principle, with strength, and they can't understand how you manage it when they cannot. They can't explain your discipline, so they call you rigid. They can't accept that you don't follow the crowd, so they label you aloof. They can't stand that you don't seek approval, so they say you're pretending to be humble. None of their mockery comes from you doing wrong. It comes from you doing right in a way they no longer can. Envy often leads to public humiliation because it's the quickest way to restore a false sense of balance. When someone mocks you in a meeting, when they tell a story that makes you a joke in front of others, they're trying to reclaim their footing. Not because you took their place, but because your presence makes them feel left behind. If they can shake you, silence you, strip away your natural ease, they can breathe easier, because in that moment, you're no longer ahead. But here's what you need to understand. Someone else's envy is not a sign of your flaw, but a silent admission of your strength. No one envies what is worthless. No one bothers to hurt someone they see as harmless. If someone tries to diminish you, it's because, in their eyes, you are high enough to be noticed. And if you believe in your dignity, if you live by your values without comparison, their envy will pass over you like a lost wind. What matters most is that you do not shrink just to make others more comfortable. Kindness does not mean limiting yourself to ease someone else's weakness. Compassion does not mean accepting disrespect. Stoicism teaches that you cannot control how others feel, but you can control how you live. If someone can't stand your light, it's not your cue to dim it. It's their call to find their own. You don't need to stand out. You only need to be real. And sometimes, that reality is what unsettles others the most. Remember, you are not born to soothe someone else's insecurity. You're not obligated to hide your effort, your resolve, or your moral compass just to blend in with a group that's lost its way. You don't have to distort yourself to avoid being envied. Their envy is not yours to carry. It belongs to them. You only need to do one thing: keep living right, living clear, living strong. No need to prove, no need to fight back. Just stand firm. Because a person who knows who they are cannot be dragged down by those who haven't yet learned how to rise. 4. You haven't set boundaries. There's something few of us are taught growing up. If you don't draw the line, someone else will do it for you. And most of the time, they'll draw it in their favor, not yours. In any relationship, work, family, or friendship, if you don't state clearly what is unacceptable, people will gradually test your limits. Not always out of malice, but because human instinct naturally wants to see how far it can go. They test with an inappropriate joke, an excessive request, a disrespectful act. And if you stay silent, don't react, don't address it. To them, it signals your consent. Boundaries don't appear on their own. They are established through words, through behavior, through the consistency of your responses. And if you avoid conflict, fear offending others, or worry about being seen as difficult, you may fall into the trap of blind tolerance. Kindness becomes a mask for weakness, and silence, instead of preserving peace, gradually strips away your ability to own your place in any relationship. One day, you'll wake up and realize you're living in a space you no longer control. The people who once respected you now issue commands freely, The jokes you used to dismiss are now their default tone, and you begin to ask yourself, how did it come to this? The answer often lies in the first moment you didn't say no, when you forced a smile after an offensive remark, when you accepted a task no one else would, when you held back your true feelings just to avoid disappointing others. Each of those moments was not just a compromise with someone else. It was a compromise with your own self-respect. And over time, the disrespect stops being the exception and becomes the norm. A framework you never chose, but now follow, simply because you never objected. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish." It sounds harsh, but it reflects a truth every adult must face. Setting boundaries means you will disappoint some people. They may say, "You've changed." They may react poorly when the easy version of you disappears, but that temporary discomfort is the price you pay for long-term peace. You cannot find real serenity if you live in constant fear that others will get upset, leave you, or judge you, just because you finally said, "That's enough." Boundaries are not harshness. They are declarations of respect. When you tell someone their tone is unacceptable, you're not being weak, you're being principled. When you decline responsibilities that aren't yours, it's not a lack of enthusiasm. It's clarity about your limits. When you walk away from a toxic relationship, even when the other person wants to keep you there, it's not selfishness. It's the recognition that sacrifice should not be one-sided. And once you begin living by these principles, you'll notice something shift. Those who once dismissed you start to hesitate. Those who once took your compliance for granted begin to ask your opinion, and those who can't accept your boundaries, they walk away. You don't need to mourn that. Boundaries aren't meant to keep people in. They're meant to keep your peace intact. The relationships that matter won't vanish just because you learn to protect yourself. On the contrary, it's only when you live with clarity and consistency that you attract those who truly respect you. They don't come to exploit your softness. They come to walk beside your steadiness. And that is the true foundation of lasting connection. Boundaries don't need to be shouted or delivered in conflict. They can emerge from calm presence, from a steady gaze, from a clear statement, "I don't agree with that," or simply from walking away when you're no longer valued. That is stoicism, not loud resistance, but quiet strength born of knowing who you are. When you no longer feel the need to explain why you're protecting yourself, you've stepped into true freedom. Remember, how far others go depends entirely on how far you allow them to. If you don't set the limits, you'll be swept along by demands, expectations, and behavior that don't belong to you. Until one day, you no longer recognize yourself. And the hard truth is this: people won't stop just because you're hurt. They stop only when you finally say, "I won't accept this anymore." 5. They need an audience. One of the rawest truths about the act of humiliating others is this: it rarely happens in the dark. It needs light, sound, and eyes. In other words, it needs an audience. Those who enjoy mocking, belittling, or tearing others down don't just do it to satisfy their anger or inner insecurity. They do it to be seen, to have someone witness their false power, to hear the laughter, see the silence, feel the turned faces. No one stages a humiliation for themselves alone. They need a stage, and they need you to be the main character dragged down. When someone deliberately mocks you in front of others, it's not just you they're targeting. They're sending a message to the whole room. I can make this person flustered, ashamed, and uneasy, without lifting a finger. And if you respond as they expect, with confusion, embarrassment, or discomfort, they've succeeded. Not just because you were hurt, but because others saw it. The crowd becomes proof of what they perceive as power. The laughter, the awkward glances, the prolonged silence, all of it becomes part of their performance. Psychology calls this phenomenon de-individuation, when people in a group setting lose their sense of individual responsibility. One person might never laugh at you if it's just the two of you, but if there are 10 or 20 people, they might laugh. Not because they agree with the one attacking you, but because they fear being the odd one out. The fear of isolation makes many align with false strength. And that's what your attacker hopes for. Not only that you fall, but that you fall to the sound of laughter or the indifference of others. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The opinion of 10,000 men is of no value if none of them know the truth." This philosophy reminds us that the voice of the crowd is not always the voice of reason. The crowd can be wrong. The crowd can laugh out of fear, not agreement. The crowd can stay silent, not because it sees no wrong, but because it's protecting itself from becoming the next target. And if you, in a moment of public shame, understand this, you will no longer feel alone. You will see the truth. You haven't lost. You've simply been placed on a stage others built to feel important. Those who need an audience to humiliate others are not truly strong. They are so weak they must lean on others' eyes to validate their worth. They cannot confront you directly, so they use the crowd to shake your footing. But what they don't anticipate is this. If you refuse to play by their rules, the stage collapses. If you don't react as they expect, if you don't flinch, don't spiral, don't apologize for something you didn't do, your silence becomes a bell of reckoning. You leave them confused, and the crowd, seeing no victim, begins to shift its gaze elsewhere. Strength in these moments is not about shouting, retaliating, or putting someone in their place. It's about steady posture, calm eyes, and refusing to let emotion dictate your response. It's when you say, "I don't find that funny," and stay silent. It's when you walk out of the room, no explanation, no apology, because you know you are under no obligation to stay where you aren't respected. And you don't do it to teach anyone a lesson. You do it because you refuse to betray yourself again. Stoicism doesn't teach you to be above others. It teaches you to master yourself, even when mocked before a crowd. You cannot control the laughter. You cannot stop the remarks. But you can guard your inner calm. And once you stop letting the presence of spectators dictate your worth, you become free. You don't need approval to feel worthy. You don't need defense to keep moving forward. You only need one thing, to understand that you are not standing alone. You are standing with yourself. And from that moment, the false power of your accuser begins to dissolve. They no longer have an audience. No one is left convinced of their authority because you didn't fall. And that, in the eyes of everyone watching, is the greatest victory. 6. They sense you don't know your own worth. Among all the reasons someone might humiliate you, this may be the most deeply rooted and the most vulnerable, when you haven't truly recognized your own worth. No one needs to say it aloud. No one needs to confirm it. Those who are perceptive can sense it. They see it in your eyes, in how you react to criticism, how you stay silent when mocked, how you force a smile when you're out of place. And they know you haven't yet stood firm on your inner foundation. You're still searching for a place to belong, for someone to validate you, to tell you you are enough. When someone senses you don't fully know who you are, they will test you, not by directly attacking your skills, but by targeting the uncertainty in how you see yourself. They'll use sarcasm to see if you waver. They'll plant doubt to see if you rush to explain. They'll ask demeaning questions to see if you instinctively defend yourself. And when you respond as they expect, when you try to prove yourself, seek approval, aim to please, it confirms to them that you have no firm sense of inner worth. And the danger is this: those who lack a strong internal foundation are always easier to manipulate from the outside. Epictetus once said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." Mastery here is not just about behavior. It's about knowing your value. When you don't know what you're worth, you'll accept almost any treatment just to avoid being left out, isolated, or disregarded. You'll laugh at jokes that hurt you. You'll agree with views that belittle you. You'll ask yourself whether you're wrong to feel insulted. And so, little by little, you build a life that depends on how others see you, just to know how you should see yourself. The sad truth is, most of us are taught how to please others before we're taught how to understand ourselves. As children, we're told to behave, obey, be agreeable, be humble. But few of us are taught how to say, "I don't agree," how to say, "I don't deserve to be treated like this," or how to walk out of a room where we're not respected. So many grow up with a polite exterior, but beneath it, a blurry, fragile core. And ironically, it's often these very people who become the easiest targets for those who seek to humiliate others. When you haven't defined your own worth, you can't clearly distinguish between critique and contempt, between silence out of respect and silence out of fear, between keeping peace and being diminished. You begin to slip into self-blame, self-doubt, and self-editing, trying to be more acceptable. But that's not growth. It's erosion. And once your identity is eroded, there's nothing left to protect, nothing left to stand for. You allow others to define you, with ignorance, or worse, with disdain. Eleanor Roosevelt, a woman once mocked for her looks, her voice, and her refusal to conform, once said, "No one can make you feel inferior without your consent." She didn't just say it. She lived it through years of public criticism from the press, from politicians, even from her own family. Yet she did not shrink. She didn't change herself to please others. She stood firm because she had completed the most vital work, discovering her worth. Not in others' eyes, but in her own. When you know who you are, shallow opinions no longer wound you. An insult is just passing wind. A contemptuous glance is only a shadow. A humiliation attempt falls into emptiness because there is nothing there for it to cling to. You don't need to argue. You don't need to win the exchange because you understand what others think has no power to change what you know. And what you know becomes the foundation of your calm, your strength, and your unshakable peace. I used to stay silent when insulted. I used to force a smile to get past cruel jokes, just to avoid making things awkward. I used to tell myself they probably didn't mean it, even as my chest quietly ached. But the more I endured, the more I realized I was digging a hole. A place where others could step in, say anything, do anything, without a second thought about the consequences. No one stops if you don't say, "That's enough." No one respects you if you don't respect yourself first. Only when I began to live by principle, when I stopped laughing at insults, when I started walking away from places that no longer deserved me, did I understand. Self-respect doesn't come from being treated kindly by others. It comes from refusing firmly to let yourself be diminished ever again. If this message resonates with you, please like, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you won't miss future content. And remember, the deepest respect you can ever receive is the one you give yourself. When you choose to live in accordance with what you know you truly deserve. See you in the next video.